Hey guys, VaulSC here, hope that you're having a good week. So recently Hospitalier released this new action pack for Bakunin, and they updated the army builder with the new profiles for Bakunin. They didn't change every single profile in the army list, just some of the newer ones, and they updated a few of the older ones, and they left a lot of things unchanged. They also went across to Pan-Oceania and increased the Bulletier by about 3 points, and I think took a 0.5 SWC off one of the Orc profiles. Then they left the rest of the game unchanged. And of course, recently I did a video about that. It's still on YouTube. You can go and watch my summary and my critique of sort of what happened there. That video was more about the fact that they decided to change one thing that didn't really need a lot of attention, and more importantly, decided not to change anything else. And a number of you guys actually responded to that video and said, hey, look, thanks for speaking up about that. Really agree with it. I'm glad somebody's talking about that. There were 2 or 3 people who decided they were really unhappy about that and just wanted to personally attack me and actually say some nasty things to me. When that kind of thing happens, all it really does is it makes me want to come back and just double down on it and do even more criticism and be even more caustic. So that's just what you're going to get, guys, and that's what we're going to be doing today. I'm sorry, it's just going to be happening. I'm going to go back to Hospitallier's, their design, their decisions about this game, and at the end of the day, it's about acknowledging that Infinity is actually in a good place. It is a good game to play. It's better than, say, Warhammer 40,000, but it could so easily be a little bit better. There's not much effort required to actually get this game up to the next level, and Hospitalier aren't really interested in doing that, as we've seen. Okay, so in this video, I'm going to be talking a bit about how they go about actually deciding how many points a unit profile costs. And part of the inspiration for that is that after this Bulletier nerf came out, eventually somebody from Hospitalier, probably Bostria, went on social media and wrote a comment in reply to somebody and said, look, the reason why we increased the Bulletier's points was because there's this points formula in the background, which we use to determine how many points a profile is supposed to cost, and that points formula is usually working, but we noticed that it wasn't working correctly for the Bulletier, so we just fixed that by actually just recalibrating it so the Bulletier would be worth the points that we needed it to be. And fair enough, that's what they've done. But curiously, they are alluding to a points formula in the background, which apparently is being used, and this is something the community has known about for many years. We've heard them talk about this in the past, and even some people have gone ahead and actually done a bit of a homebrew to sort of figure it out. Because if you think about it, you take a unit like a 10-point Fusilier, and you note that if you pick the one with the Fort Observer upgrade, it increases it by like 1 or 2 points or whatever it is. And it seems to be the case that when you go to other line troopers like Zanshis or Gulams or whatever, they pay a similar number of points to increase their profiles to have a Fort Observer without changing anything else. Therefore, the Fort Observer ability must be worth that many points, and therefore you can sort of figure out a points formula for a lot of other profiles by going, okay, here's 2 very similar units, but this one has Mimetism or MSV2, or you have a particular loadout, and one of its options, one of its weapons options, is to add this additional thing but change nothing else, and that increases it by a certain number of points. So people have gone through the whole army builder and sort of just created a bit of a system to model what they think Hospitalier will be doing, and generally it works reasonably well, and it's fairly predictive. But in this video, we are going to examine that a little bit more closely, and I will demonstrate and basically prove to you guys that it's not exactly a perfect system, and in fact, there's a lot of things in Hospitallier's points value system that really just doesn't work. Okay? That's what this video is going to be about. Before we jump into the fun stuff, I just want to remind you guys that Table Game Fun Times is a series of Infinity videos on my YouTube channel, featuring a lot of really cool stop-motion action cinematic stuff like you're seeing right now. So if you want to see more of this, a lot of you guys haven't actually seen this show, just have a look at the link that I'll put up here, or the end screen video, and or just search my channel for Table Game Fun Times, and that'll take you straight to it. Love you to check that stuff out. Okay. The points formula that determines how many points a unit profile is going to be worth for all of the different factions and so forth. Is it real? Does it work? Those are a couple of questions I want you guys to think about as we go through this. Because honestly, a lot of the stuff in this game does make sense. Like, a lot of the points that are attributed to units and to profiles and to loadouts are reasonable. Like, they are actually appropriately costed. So most of the game is actually looking okay, but there is a lot of the game that's, you know, a bit uncomfortable at the moment. And again, the overriding thing, if you take anything away from this video, I just want you to take those 1 point away from the video, that Infinity is in a good place, but it would be so easy for them to make this game quite a lot better and quite a lot more comfortable for competitive players and more exciting, you know, for a lot of us who love to build lists. All right. Okay, time for the fun stuff. Let's dive into an example of something that I want to talk about here and really make a point about. Okay. So what are we looking at here? This is the Securitate line infantry unit for Nomads. And if you're a Nomad player, you can put one of these in your list, but you could also use a Moran. And we're going to focus on the one profile loadout here for the Securitate, one of two actually, that has a repeater innately. So the important thing about the repeater there is that it's a default piece of equipment. It's not a deployable repeater. You don't have to spend orders placing it on the table. As soon as you deploy the Securitate, it has a repeater permanently, and if any enemy model walks within 8 inches of it, zone of control, it extends the hacking area of your other hackers. So that can be quite powerful. Now the Moran, as you guys know, has the same piece of equipment, but when we look at the stats, we also see that the stats are quite similar. 4-4 move, close combat is a little bit different, but that doesn't really make a lot of difference. BS12 the same, physical 11 versus 10, very similar. Securitate has slightly more whip but less physical, but the Moran is innately a specialist. So that's kind of cool. Well, not innately, yeah, Fort Observer, I guess, so innately. Armor 1 Securitate wins there. Everything else is fairly similar. Securitate is veteran, which means that if your army goes into loss of lieutenant, then you're still providing a regular order. The Moran doesn't have that. But the Moran has a lot of other abilities that the Securitate does not have. So the Moran, you know, you're talking infiltration, that's a big one. Mimetism, is that a good ability? You tell me. Mind Layer, which it can use its Crazy Koala from, so it deploys with one Crazy Koala and can spit out another one. It's a Fort Observer, as we talked about. The Securitate does not have that. It has Stealth and Terrain Total, that sometimes comes up. On top of the Combi Rifle, it's got a Flash Pulse and decharges, all right? And the pistol and CCW are the same. Now, for this Moran, you pay 0.5 SWC, so all that extra stuff seems to be worth 0.5 SWC and 1 point, all right? So what Corvus Belli is sort of implying here is that these two units are roughly equivalent. Like, the Moran is a little bit better, and that's why you pay the additional 0.5 SWC and 1 more point. Other than that, they're very, very comparable units, okay? So why is it that in any sort of Nomad list, you always see the Morans? In fact, you see 2 of them, but you almost never see like a Securitate repeater by himself. I think, and I better just spell this out for newer and less experienced players. Infiltration is massive because it means that the repeater is out in the midfield. Your opponent has to cross through the middle of the table, and in fact, you know, even once they come within 8 inches while they're on their own side, they are already being hacked by this thing. So that's massive. The Crazy Koala is actually really big. It has potential to kill an enemy unit that comes nearby and defends your army very, very well. And you have that like by default. It just appears there. Okay. The fact that you are a specialist is usually worth at least a point somewhere in the points formula rate of things. So if that's accounting for the difference between 16 and 17, great. But the 0.5 SWC apparently gets you infiltration and mimetism and mind layer Crazy Koala and stealth and terrain total and, you know, all that other stuff. So is this the result of the points formula going, okay, these units are actually equivalent, like all that additional stuff the Moran is in fact worth just that little bit, or is the points formula not applying to these, or is there something wrong with the points formula? That's sort of something that we're going to be getting at in this video. For those of you who really sort of hate the criticism, hate the idea that there's anything wrong with Infinity the game, feel free to sort of add your very objective comments and just sort of explain to us what's the reasoning why you would take the Securitate repeater over the Moran. Is it too much to spend the 0.5 SWC and the extra point? Does the Securitate have something that we're missing here? Is Veteran a really, really good ability that makes it worth it? Or is it just the case that the Moran is just a billion times better and we always see it, and the Securitate is too expensive and the Moran is too cheap? That's sort of something we're getting at in this video, is like, Corvus Belli have had the opportunity to look through the game and fix certain things, and they felt like the Bulletier was not expensive enough. Like there was something wrong with the Bulletier. It was too cheap. It was too powerful. They needed to make it cost more so that the game would be fairer. They actually, obviously believe that because they've done that, but they have made no changes to the Moran and no changes to the Securitate, which is interesting. So that's our first example. This is a sort of internal balance kind of thing where it's Nomad unit versus Nomad unit, and when you're building vanilla Nomad lists, I mean, if you play a lot of like high-level tournament games with Nomads, feel free to tell me whether you ever make that comparison and that consideration. Are you sort of considering the Securitate? Even when you play Tunguska, when you don't have Moran, are you going to put that 16-point Securitate in your list, or are you just going to take infiltrating hackers like the Zero and use fast pandas and stuff like that? That's sort of what we're getting at here. Cool, so we're having fun. We're going to have a look at another one of these comparisons. And for this particular one, I'm going to try and entertain our newer players here and our less experienced Infinity players here by covering up the points values on this one. We're looking at the Knight of Justice from Pan-Oceania and comparing it to the Asawira from Hakislam. And for this, I won't show you the points values of these guys. We're just going to look at the stats first, and then we're going to ask ourselves how much should each of these units be worth based on what we're seeing here. Okay, so right off the bat, they're both heavy infantry, they're both regular orders, both have cubes, both have hacking, they're both hackable. Movement exactly the same, close combat stat exactly the same, blister skill, physical exactly the same. There is a point of difference on the willpower. Asawira is better at being a specialist, better at discovering, better at button pressing, but it loses a point of armor. So which unit is better so far? Would you rather have 1 point of armor or 1 point of willpower? I think some people say that they are reasonably equivalent. I believe that the 1 point of armor is better, especially since we're going to be talking about a unit that's doing a lot of fighting and shooting. So on this basis so far on the stat line, the Knight of Justice is just a little bit better. Having an additional point of willpower is not nothing though. So if it was just like a willpower 13 Asawira, then the Knight of Justice would clearly have better stats. But the Knight of Justice really is only just barely ahead on that 1 point of armor, because the willpower it is worth a little bit there. Okay, so this unit continues to be quite similar. Martial Arts level 2 on both of them, so they're both equally good in close combat. Then we have Frenzy on the Asawira, and honestly, Frenzy is a little bit of a liability. Once it kills something, it becomes impetuous, it loses cover, so the Asawira goes down a little bit there. But what we will be talking about later is that when Corvus Belli updated their fire teams rules, they allowed the Asawira to go in duos, even in vanilla. So when you're in a duo, you don't really worry about Frenzy, and if you're playing in if we're comparing like Assassin Baram, which has the Asiras in linked teams, versus the Knight of Justice being in military orders in linked teams, then Frenzy's never going to come up. So that's not really a thing to compare there. Okay, Berserk +3 on the Asawira. Now, this is actually a point in the Asawira's favor, because Berserk is optional. Like, it's not something that compels you to do something which is going to give you disadvantage. It's not going to come up every single game, but sometimes you're going to be in a position where you absolutely want to kill that target, even though it's going to, cost you damage on your Asawira. So maybe the enemy has got a lieutenant, which is a really good close combat lieutenant, which you just have to remove, or something like a specialist for a scenario where you just really have to kill it, or just a model that's in a great position and it's about to be your opponent's turn. They're going to spend a lot of orders on it. So you have to rush across and just bash it. So the Asawira does that very well with Martial Arts Level 2, CC 23, and just Speed 6 plus 2. The Knight of Justice can't do that. So in some situational circumstances, the Asawira is going to benefit from that. Dodge plus 2 inches on the Asawira. The Knight of Justice doesn't have that. Now this is something which comes up a lot more often. When you're moving and you're dodging something like a chain rifle, maybe wanting to get in close combat, you're doing this in the active turn for a 4-inch dodge. And then reactively, if you're trying to dodge your way into close combat or around back behind cover, you're getting effectively a dodge 4-inch, whereas the Knight of Justice only 2-inch. This is something which matters. This is something which I would say would be worth points. So a big tick in the Asawira's favor there. That actually is pretty huge. Note that they are 6-2 movement, so if you're just moving down the battlefield, what you can do is move and then dodge. Fizz 14 is going to proc the dodge most of the time, so you can actually move more like 10 inches per order, whereas the Knight of Justice is only ever going to be able to move 8. So that is something which you can do optionally. Both have immunity shock, of course. Regeneration. That is huge. That is massive. It means that if you go unconscious at the end of the turn, you automatically roll with no orders spent on the unit. And if you get a Fizz 14 or less, the unit just comes back again with 1 wound. It's just healed. I can't really overstate how massive that is. You're attacking the enemy, and then on your very last order, you're killed, but then you get revived. So at the start of your opponent's turn, they have to spend more orders shooting you, and you've got a Whip 14 dodge with, a Speed 4 dodge, or you can shoot back at BS 14 with your Spitfire. That's massive. Or if the enemy is just desperately trying to gun you down and do damage, and the very last order they kill you, but you get back up again, so at the start of your turn, you can just start spending orders in the Asawira. This is absolutely massive. And at physical 14, what are the chances of getting that off? Is it like 70%? So 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 6 times 5, 30. I think that's 70% chance to have that work. So given that the Asawira has this, but the Knight of Justice doesn't, I think we have to quite confidently say that so far, the Asawira is the better trooper because it's got regeneration and berserk, and the Knight of Justice really only has that +1 armor trade-off. And we're going to kind of discount Frenzy here because it's so easy to have the Asawira in a link team. Both of them are religious, so a similar comparison there. The Asawira has stealth, so does the Knight of Justice, and the Knight of Justice has mountain terrain, which almost never comes up, so it's not really a big difference. Moving on to the equipment, so a Spitfire for the Knight of Justice, and also for the Asawira, but the difference is the Asawira also has armor piercing. Does that matter? Well, it does, because in M4, when you've got crits causing 2 armor saves, something with a lot of armor, like a armor 8 tag and cover, saving on 11s, you can cut that down to, it's not 11s, it's +11 armor, I should say. Against the Asawira, you are effectively armor 4 plus cover, so that's +7 armor. So the Knight of Justice has got to crack 11 points worth of armor, and the Asawira has to crack 7 points worth of armor. That is actually kind of a big deal, because tags are fairly common in the game, even troops and link teams with armor 5 trooper, armor 4. The Asawira is shaving off a couple of points there, makes the Asawira much more effective at sort of cracking through things, and if the Knight of Justice is continually having to shoot at something that's passing armor saves, that is less efficient on orders, gives you more of a chance of getting unlucky and getting hit by an arrow. So that's pretty big. And Nanopulsar as well for the Asawira. The Knight just doesn't have that. So a Nanopulsar is actually really massive, because if something's trying to attack you and it can't really afford to fail a wound, the Nanopulsar is huge there. The Polaris Bearpode is massive in the meta right now, so if you're being assaulted by all of these Cosmoflot players and the bears just attacking you, the Asawira might be in a link team with Burst 2 Nanopulsar. The bear's got absolutely no BTS, whereas the Knight of Justice kind of has to just face-to-face it and deal with it. Heavy Pistol, DA, CCW, Spitfire, they're just going to do 1 wound a turn against the Bearpode, whereas the Asawira can sort of burst 2 Nanopulsar and hopefully do some damage to it. Now, the Knight does have the Heavy Pistol instead, so would you rather have the upgraded pistol to Heavy Pistol, or would you rather have the upgraded Spitfire to AP plus Nanopulsar? I personally would prefer the AP Spitfire. Let me know if there's something I've missed about the Heavy Pistol that's amazing about it. But overall here, it looks like the Asawira is just a little bit better than the Knight of Justice. Just tell me in the comments if you disagree with that, if you think that we're missing something in the Knight of Justice. Overall, I'm not talking about like specific circumstantial, like corner case situations. Overall, over like lots of ITS tournaments, is the Knight of Justice generally going to be helping you win more, or is the Asawira going to be doing that? Like, if you're a military orders player, would you prefer that the Knight of Justice had the Asawira's rules, or would you stick with that? And if you're a Hakistan player, would you prefer that the Asawira just had the Knight of Justice rules, or would you prefer to stick with the Asawira rules, okay? So think about that. And if you're a new player, or an inexperienced player, and you're not too sure about the points of these profiles, pause the video and have a think about how much each of these should be worth, and then we'll talk, okay? So pausing the video. All right, so for those of you guys who decided how many points these should be worth, let's take away the blindfold here and have a look. The Knight of Justice is 47 points for that profile, and the Asawira is 39 points. That is a difference. Let me just count the math in my head. That is 8 points difference. 47 minus 39 is 8. Am I getting that right? So not only is the Asawira cheaper, I feel like the Asawira is a better unit than the Knight for the reasons we talked about, but it's also 8 points cheaper. Let me ask you something. Is 8 points a big deal? Like, is that a lot of points in Infinity? You get 300 points to spend. For those of you guys who've had the experience of writing a lot of lists for like competitive ITS play, and in your head you're thinking about, oh gosh, you know, I might run into a Cosmoflot player, a Nomads player, a Combined Army player, you know, Assassins player, Toha. Other people are going to have these like 300/6 lists, which are really sort of tightly formed and have tons of vicious stuff in them. I need to get as much efficiency out of my list as possible. If I just said to you, hey, look, you can have an additional 8 points over your opponents, you know, how much more value could you get for that? And in a situation like this, you've got the Hakistan player, you know, saving effectively 8 points versus that other profile. Or if you want to look at it in reverse, the military orders player is spending that additional 8 points over top of that. So coming back to this points formula from Corvus Belli, what they seem to be able to do for some units is go, right, the points formula is going to attribute 10 points for Fusilier stats, an additional 1 point if it's a Fort Observer. But when it comes to comparing between factions, you've got, if there is a formula, we're unsure at this point, if you put in the 6.2 speed and the 23cc and the 14 BS and just have all that other stuff the same, but give the Asawira additionally regen and additionally berserk and additionally armor piercing and additionally nanopulsar, and the Knight of Justice gets maybe a few little insignificant things. Apparently that is a discount somehow, so the points formula is just dragging it down by 8 points. I'm just so baffled by this. Now, again, people who hate the criticism and don't like it when we sort of, you know, talk negatively about Infinity the game, you know, you may want to come in here and say, hey, look, you know, they deliberately want to give Hakistan something really good, and they want to deliberately give military orders something really bad because there's other stuff in Hakistan that's bad, and there's other stuff in military orders that's good, so just forget about it. And for the rest of us, we're looking at this and going, well, you know, they made Bulletiers 3 points more expensive, but they didn't want to make Asawira's 3 points more expensive, or they didn't want to sort of give Knight of Justice a little bit of a discount, or they didn't want to give it like the Penthacilia's treatment where they give it a few extra things. They've just neglected to do that. They either believe that these units are correctly costed, which is like, what the fuck, dude? Like, they either believe that, or they're just like not bothering to look. They're not bothering to sort of look through their own game and figure that out. Okay. How you guys feeling? Having fun? You want to keep doing some more? Let's just keep looking through them, and we'll jump into another fun one. Okay, so this next comparison is going to be between the Hideout, which is a Yuching unit. It can also go in some sectorials, and the Minutemen from Ariadne, which is probably most commonly used, if it is used, in US Ariadne. USARF. Now, let's go through it. So, the Hideout is hackable, but has a cube. Okay, so the Minuteman, right off the bat, you know, it's good to not be hackable. Okay, so the Minuteman kind of likes that. 4/4 speed, CC, well, the Minuteman is just a little bit better there because he's got CC 20 plus the -3 CC attack. So these are not units which are really designed to do a lot of close combat fighting, but in a pinch, like if it really comes down to it, the Minuteman is a little bit ahead there. BS13 for the Hideout, same for the Minuteman. Minuteman's better at dodging. He's got +1 inch for the move and better physical, so he's going to hit harder in close combat and all of that. But the Hideout has +1 whip, so for discovering and doing objectives and stuff, the Hideout is a little bit better, which matters. Armor and BTS and wounds and silhouette the same, and availability is not too big a deal in this comparison. So reasonably even. I mean, I'm probably inclined to just barely give it to the Minuteman just based on the stats. So the Minuteman's maybe a little bit better. Moving through the abilities, so the Hideout has Courage, NWI, Shock, Terrain, 0G. Minuteman has Train Total, Immunity Shock, and then with the guns and stuff, they both have boarding shotguns here. The Minuteman has Grenades, which is kind of a nice one. Physical 13 means that you are spec firing it on a 7, so that'll come up sometimes. Heavy Pistol versus the Breaker Pistol, probably prefer the Heavy Pistol. But the Hideout is a specialist with Killer Hacker, okay? So the Minuteman is getting 1 additional point, which is perhaps fair to pay considering you've got grenades, you've got the heavy pistol, you're better at dodging, you're slightly better in close combat. A lot of those are sort of corner case, they don't come up very much. And the Hideout kind of makes up for some of that deficit by being a specialist, which is a killer hacker, although the Minuteman is not hackable at all. But overall, these are roughly comparable units. They are both effectively heavy infantry. They can go on link teams and things. So it should come as no surprise that they cost roughly the same points, with the Hideout being 24 and the Minuteman being 25. So given all of these things, it feels like the points formula is working reasonably well. But again, if you're a newer player, less experienced, you don't know much about Infinity, why don't you just pause the video for 1 second and just figure out which of these units you prefer. Then we'll unpause the video now, and we'll talk about it. Did you spot it? If you spotted this, congratulations. You may have noticed that the Hideout has no wound incapacitation, whereas the Minuteman doesn't, and they both have immunity shock, okay? So let's say both of these units in a situation where you're moving out and you're attacking something, the enemy is a war bandit, fires a chain rifle at you, you blast them with your boarding shotgun and they die, but you take 1 armor save and you fail it, because it's just an automatic hit in that situation, you're not dodging, the chain rifle just hits you. The Hideout lives there, it goes into NWI, and the Minuteman just goes unconscious. Is that a big deal? You've effectively got 2 wounds on the Hideout in a lot of situations, and you've effectively got 1 wound on the Minuteman. Same points, basically. Similar points. And the other abilities are roughly equal, right? But the Hideout is effectively able to sustain twice as much damage before it goes unconscious, or is removed, I should say. Is that a big deal? You guys tell me in the comments. If you feel like having NWI on one unit with shock and no NWI in the other unit doesn't matter, like if the points formula that they're using shouldn't really take that into account, then just give me a reasoning for that. But for everybody else, I think we know that the Hideout either should be worth a few more points based on this, or more realistically, and what I think should be the case, is that the Minuteman should be worth like maybe 6 points less, something like that, because it's just very easy to kill. 1 nanopulsar hit, or 1 chain rifle hit, or just 1 unlucky sort of crit from somebody and you're gone. But the Hideout can sustain that additional wound, which makes it just so much more desirable, you know? It's crazy. In the meta, you do see the Hideout being used in a faction like Invincible Army. Like, that's where it will show up. In USARF, people don't particularly use the Minutemen very much, and in Vanilla Arena, you definitely don't use them. I think that the Minutemen are all completely overcosted, and what we're hearing from a lot of other players in the community is the agreement on that. Whereas the Hideout feels like it's appropriately costed. If anything, maybe a little bit too cheap, but given that there's so many other things in the game which are very affordable and cheap, then I don't think it would make sense to reduce the points value on the Hideout. The Bulletier, though, are definitely for extra 3 points on the Bulletier for sure. But for these guys, no, they're appropriately costed. You know, it's an equivalent comparison. You've got 1 unit with NWI, another one that doesn't. But hey, if you guys disagree, just tell me why you feel like the close combat ability, the Minuteman, the grenades, the heavy pistol. Tell me why all that makes up for NWI. I'm listening. I'll read your comment, I promise. All right, let's go to another one. I think we should go to another one, which is probably a little bit easier to defend from Corvus Belli's side. Let's jump into another one here, which is going to be the Hospitalier Knights versus the Crane Regent. So the Hospitalier Knights from Oceania, most commonly used, I think, in a faction like Svalorema. Or maybe some of the NA2 sectorials, if they can have them, can't quite remember. Imperial Agent is something you'd really only see in Imperial Service, and even then, I feel like you'd only use this guy in like early N3. Like, he's not really a unit that's seen in N4. But to compare them, similar stuff. They are both heavy infantry, cube, regular order, hackable, same movement. Close combat stat, the Crane's a little bit better, but again, neither of these units are like infiltrating, sort of skirmishing units which start out there and just jump into close combat. These guys won't see a lot of close combat, but still, the Crane rank is a little bit better. BS 14 and physical 14 for the Knight. So are those stats important? Well, I mean, kind of. I mean, this is a shooting unit. So +1 BS for the Knight, it does matter. And the Phys 14, I think, for dodging is important too. Although the Crane rank can dodge further. It's got the +2 inch distance. Of course, they're both immunity shock. They both have stealth. The Knight is religious troop, but frenzy, and again, that matters unless you're in a link team. So the Knight would usually appear in a 3-man link, or 5-man link if you're crazy. But yeah, you're not going to see this in like vanilla Pan-Oceania by itself. So again, the frenzy is not going to crop up that much. They both have a multi-rifle, but the Crane rank has +1 burst for the nanopulsar. They both have the same pistol DACCW, and the Crane rank has the triangulated fire sensor NX visor package, which is really cool. It doesn't crop up that much. Like, for those of you who play a lot of Infinity, like if you've played like 3 ITS tournaments in the last year, maybe tell me how many times you've seen triangulated fire being used. I don't think it's that much. But in summary, the Crane rank is arguably the better unit. I mean, the BS 14 and Phys 14 that the Hospitalier Knight gets is pretty much its only advantage, whereas the Crane rank, you don't have to worry about frenzy. You've got an additional nanopulsar +1 burst, and you've got the triangulated fire sensor X visor. So arguably the Crane rank is better. So the points formula being used by Corvus Belli here should make it more expensive in terms of the profile cost, and it does. Only thing that I find a little bit concerning is that the points formula seems to have gone a little bit overboard here and made it 15 points more expensive. So what does that 15 points buy you? It's buying you triangulated fire, sensor, X visor, a nanopulsar +1 burst, and that's about it. Note that the deficit should be impacted by the Knight having better ballistical, better physical. I think everything else is the same. You get an extra willpower with the Crane rank, so that's something. So this comparison, I think, there's an argument here. Like, it's defensible. Like, you could come along as somebody who's a real Corvus Belli fanboy, just can't bear the thought of Infinity being criticized. And if you're that kind of person, you can rush in the White Knight to save the day and go, look, actually, for 15 points, you get all that stuff, and triangulated fire wins games sometimes, and sense is so important in the meta against those camo markers, and X visor means, I mean, with the multi-rifle, you're shooting it at like long range a lot of the time, and that's avoiding the -3. So the Crane rank is definitely like 15 points, worth it. You guys tell me, like, if you've had a lot of experience with this game, list building, are you running into Crane ranks a lot? Are you running into Hospitalier Knights? I don't think you're running into either of them. Neither of them are particularly popular units. But just tell me what you think of that 15 points difference. Like, how much more expensive than the Hospitalier Knight would you expect the Crane rank to be to justify its cost in terms of those additional abilities it gets? Because, I mean, that's an interesting one. I wanted to sort of be a bit fairer and sort of give this example where you have a bit of data to chew on and a bit of an argument to go over. And how do you feel that this compares to the other examples we gave, such as the Asawira versus Knight of Justice? All right, guys, we're having fun. One more of these, then we'll go. So, just lastly, the Yadu Trooper from Aleph versus the Evader from Nomads. Okay, so right off the bat, the Evader's hackable, the Yadu Trooper isn't. So that's something. The Yadu Trooper is a bit faster than the Evader in the first short skill, the 6-2. Same physical ability. BS the same, physical the same, willpower a little bit better for the Yadu, BTS the same, all the other stats the same. So on the top line there, the Yadu just a little bit better, just a little bit. I wouldn't want to be hackable. I'd prefer the speed. So the Yadu wins on that one. They both have courage, of course. They're both immunity shock, NWI. So unlike the comparison between the Minuteman and the Hideout, these guys both can sustain an additional wound effectively. The Yadu Troop has number 2, which means that if the Link Leader dies, it becomes a Link Leader. No need to spend a command token reforming, so it's great for Link teams there. It's Veteran, which means that if you are a Lost Lieutenant, it's going to supply its regular order to the pool, which is nice. So that's that for the Yadu. The Evader... Deactivator just doesn't matter, that's never used. The Evader is automatically a specialist operative, which is nice. I feel like that's worth a little bit, so that claws it back a little bit for the Evader. Terrain 0G doesn't come up that much. Climbing Plus is kind of cool. It's not the best ability in the world, but it is useful sometimes. All of that, I don't think it quite makes it as good as the Yadu. I'd probably prefer the base stats of the Yadu, but I mean the specialist is a big deal. The thing is though, with the Yadu Trooper, you can just choose one of the profile options, which is specialist based, so that's not too big a deal. Then we go down to the weaponry, and they both have a multi-rifle. Now the Yadu has the Emirat drop bears, whereas the Evader's got the Panzerfaust D charges. Which of those loadouts do you prefer? And I can't really compare those directly. It's like apples and oranges. Sometimes the Emirat's going to be absolutely clutch and the drop bears are going to be really useful, but other times you're just going to be shooting from long range. In a Link team, the Panzerfaust with all the Link team bonuses, and that's going to be important. The D-charges maybe for a sabotage scenario, that sometimes comes in. So I don't think you can really say, for sure, which one of those loadouts is strictly better. In terms of the points formula, I should be expecting them to be reasonably similar, because there's always an argument for the Panzerfaust, always an argument for Emirat. It's not a matter of one of them being strictly better. Yadu does have a heavy pistol, the Evader only has the regular pistol, okay? But the points difference is 10. So that's the real killer there. Do you see a lot of Yadu troopers in OSS lists in tournaments? If you go look through them, are OSS players running the basic Yadu multi-rifle or even the Forward Observer multi-rifle a lot? You can tell me in the comments. Evaders, do you see them a lot? Yes, you see them in most Corregidor lists, in my opinion, because they are so cheap and they provide all this stuff and they're a really good specialist. 10 points, what is that getting you? So 10 points seems to be implying that maybe the Eberrat and drop bears are just absolute gold. It seems to be implying that Veteran and number 2 are absolute just, bonkers abilities, that having maybe +1 willpower makes up a lot of that. Does it though? 10 points is a huge number of points. If you go through the game and you find your favorite 14-point unit, and then go through the game and find your favorite 24-point unit, generally you're getting quite a lot more value for that additional 10 points, aren't you? Whereas the points formula, if there is one here, just isn't quite really identifying, how much the abilities and skills should be worth. And part of the struggle there too is I think that Corvus Belli and one of their employees has sort of mentioned this to me, have been quite lazy between editions, where they haven't really bothered to come back and sort of just revisit all these profiles and recalculate their points. So what's happening is that in the wider context of the game, the Link team rules are changing, all these other units coming out, the meta's sort of forming, new missions coming out, and they're just leaving the old profiles there without re-looking at them. And it's possible that the points formula that they used way back then, they used a points formula in N3 to determine the points value of a unit back then, but they haven't really reapplied any kind of formula to it nowadays. So when you're going, okay, let's just re-examine the points formula for the Bulleteer and just recalibrate it at a higher points value, they're not going back to the Yadu Trooper or the Evader and going, should we just run the points formula again and just see if it still works out as 34 for the Yadu and 24 for the Evader? It doesn't feel like that's really happened. So that's where we're at. That's some examples, guys, of where the points values in this game don't really make sense. They don't have to make sense for us to have a good game. Infinity is a good game. It's better than Warhammer 40,000. It's better than a lot of other games in the market. You can play competitive games with it, have tournaments, have great fun with your friends. for those of us who have been playing for years and years and years, again, it just feels like it wouldn't be hard. Like it's not hard for them to add 3 points to the Bulleteer's cost. So why isn't it hard for them to? Why is it so hard for them to like just leave the Knight of Justice and the Asawira the same, and the Crane rank the same, and the Minuteman? Like, surely they could actually look at a few more profiles in this game and go, right, the points value is not accurate, it's not correct there. Why don't we just put that up 3 points or down 3 points? So why don't we just ask the community? Why don't we have like a community manager who goes out and sort of gathers the feedback from people? And if we can match the feedback from a lot of people with tournament data, let's make some more changes. A lot of people say to me, hey, look, I don't think that the community are the best people to balance the game. And there's a lot of truth and there's a lot of sense to that. But at the same time, like if you're developing a game and you're not communicating with your player base at large at all, like if you're not making an effort to sort of just re-examine the game for the sake of people who are buying your products and actually playing your games, then I feel like there's a bit of an issue there. Guys, that's all I want to say on this topic. I hope you enjoyed this video. We had a look at the points formula and some related thoughts. As always, leave your comments and just tell me why you think the Minuteman's better than the Hideout, or the Asawira is, worth the points that it is, and then the Knight of Justice is just as good. Like, feel free to give me that debate and that feedback and those thoughts. And I'll see you in the next video.